guys, Tasha Mom Bear Prepping. So welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited for this video. I actually got into this conversation, you guys, with somebody on a Facebook platform, right? One of the survival Facebook pages. I don't recall which one it was, but one of the ladies, and I want to say she posted it after the Miami building collapse, right? And her question, you guys, was a very simple question of, I live in a high rise, how do I prepare for something like this? And what I found not disturbing so much, but just not helpful was the fact of it exploded with, of course, all types of people saying, child, there's nothing you can do. Like, I hope you get with God. You know what I'm saying? You're not making it, right? And I took it as an option, a challenge, if you will, that like, no, there is some stuff that you could do. Now, what I want to go over in this video is just information of what to put in an emergency kit and what to not do if you live in a building that is a high rise of some sort, or you park every day in some sort of parking structure, okay? I'm going to give you my 2 cents at the beginning, and then we'll go into the emergency kit, some stuff that you could keep in there, and then I'm going to give you 6 tips of stuff to not do should you still make it, okay? People make it, you guys, and building collapses all the time, okay? Now some examples, right? This is no different than, what do you do if there's an earthquake? So you have earthquakes, you have tornadoes, hurricanes, of course, bad maintenance, which seems to be the case in the Miami building, right? Now, what I will say about that is that's a much more difficult type of collapse, because when you have earthquakes, those buildings they shift from side to side, right? When an earthquake happens. And even if they crumble, because they are shifting when they crumble, there tends to be more pockets and holes that happen when you have a building that collapses because of an earthquake, okay? So that's the difference. And because this is a building collapse or some sort of maintenance malfunction or whatever, this building in Miami just literally collapsed down like a pancake, okay? And so that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to get to these survivors or to find bodies, is because you have it's pancake on top of pancake on top of pancake, okay? It's not a good deal. Now, when you ask me at first I am like everybody else, like, child, that's a hard one, right? I asked my man, what's the first thing you would do or tell somebody? And he's like, I don't know. Like, he didn't really have any words, because it's a difficult thing. But there is a ton of variables that determine whether you could make it or not. Where are you at in the building? What exactly happened? How bad is the damage? Is it from an earthquake? Is it from something else? But if you believe in God, God is going to take you when God takes you, okay? But I am a firm believer, you guys. I am a prepper to the fullest. I am optimistic, and I prepare because I want to be ready in case God is like, look, you're not ready. I'm not taking you now, and I happen to be in the right part of my place to be able to take advantage of something, okay? So, again, you could do all these things and you could still maybe not make it, or you could do these things and just knowing some of these tips could save your life, okay? So just take it for what it is. I'm sure I'm going to get comments, a lot of the same type of comments that I saw on that Facebook page about, ain't nothing you can do. You dead, right? And if that's how you want to believe, hey, that's your opinion. I'm 100% on board with you thinking and feeling the way that you feel. Okay. So now let's go on to what I told this young lady. So I said, look, they're right. It's very, high odds that it's going to be difficult to make it out of a situation like that. My number one thing though, that I tell people is don't live in a high rise, and don't park in parking structures like that. Okay. We had to travel for a medical appointment the other day. I didn't get the apartment. He got the hotel. And it was a high rise, you guys. We were like on the 7th floor. I hated it. I was panicked the whole time. I just did not like it because I'm like, anything could happen. And I just didn't like it. Okay. And then we went to the medical appointment, and guess what the parking was? It was a parking structure. And as soon as I pulled in, I was like, ugh, I hate this. I don't like this, you know? So number one is setting yourself up to not, if you can, you know, not be in those situations. But I get it. People have to live. Sometimes people cannot, you know, just, oh, I can't just not live in a high rise, right? So that's your prerogative. You're going to do what you're going to do. But my number one advice would be, don't be living in a high rise, and don't be living in a, or parking in parking structures. For example, living in a high rise, I mean, there's all types of dangers already, just fire dangers with all those people living in such a closed capacity. And yeah, you have exits, but that gets dangerous real quick. So it's you have to worry about earthquakes, yes, and the building crumbling, but you're worried about fire. There's a lot of other things that I would be worried about living in a high rise. Okay. So that's my first piece of advice. Second is, if you're trying to do something to just make sure that have done something to get ready, is I would probably put together a very small emergency kit dedicated to an earthquake, building collapse. Basically, for you live in a high rise, so it's kind of like a high rise emergency kit. Okay, it's not huge, right? But in each room, I would be having said things. Okay, so in each room, I would be having an emergency kit with certain things. I'd be having in this bag a little bit of water, you know, just a couple little bottles of water in this bag, you know, just not a whole lot, not a big gallon, just a couple bottles. You'd be surprised how far that could take you. I'd be having some sort of whistle, some sort of flashlight or strobe light. If you can get a flashlight that has a flashlight, but also has some kind of strobing mechanism on it, that would be great. Let me just see, make sure I got everything. A Gerber, so just something to cut with. The most important thing, I think, is having a good set of gloves in there that you could maybe put on to help you climb out. Maybe some sort of filtering mask, even something very basic could help, because if you make it through something like this, you guys, okay, you're trapped, and there's other dangers that become the dust. If there ends up being a fire in part of the structure and now you're dealing with smoke. So there's other dangers that you have to be aware of and that you're trying to survive through. So even though you just made it through this building collapsing all around you, now you have all this stuff. Now, this is what I'll say is, it's kind of like Miami, I don't know how much of a, even when an earthquake happens, you're like, it starts and you're like, oh shit, it's an earthquake, right? And you have time to react in some capacity. Most of those building structures like that, especially if it's an earthquake and stuff, you're going to have some sort of notice like, oh, it's an earthquake. The building's not just going to totally collapse, okay? It's going to take, a few seconds for that to really kind of start working, okay? Now, this maintenance one, this other thing, who knows how much they even got, okay? But maybe there was some rumbling beforehand that they experienced before it actually just totally collapsed, okay? So there could be some time to say, if you're in a certain room, to at least go to, at least make a movement towards this bag so that you're closer to it. Maybe some granola bars, just a few, all right? Because this isn't for some long, drawn out situation. Now, people have been pulled from the rubble 2 months after buildings have fallen and they were alive. It's very rare after like 2 weeks you start to really the numbers go drastically low if you do some research. But it's possible, okay? Let me just make sure I got everything that I wanted. So the only other thing is maybe an emergency blanket, those little cheap emergency blankets, something like that, a small med kit. Again, people will argue, well, you're not going to get to that whistle in that bag. You're going to, but I would venture that you don't know where you're going to be at in your house. Okay. You don't know if you're going to have 5 seconds to walk towards an emergency kit because the building starts shaking in some capacity, and you get a good, 15, 20 seconds to get to that. And yeah, then the building collapses on you. But then if you make it through that, then, maybe you have, you had some time to do that. Maybe having that bag near whatever it is you're going to get under, okay? Heavy table, whatever it is, okay? And then we're going to get into the tips right now, which will help you on where to go. Okay, so here's my 6 tips of what not to do or do. Okay, so number one is, hey, remember your phone. Most people have their phone on them. I'm just saying, for the most part, people take it to the bathroom with them. They take it to the room next door. Yes, there might be where you don't have your phone, but most people have their phone. So obviously, if you have your phone and you have, and you're able to, you have some sort of service still and you're able to call, then yes, you're going to use that to call 911 and call for help. Let them know exactly where you were at, what apartment you were, or office you're in, and exactly where you're at in that room. Okay, you're going to give them as much information as you can about your location before that phone dies. Okay. And something I probably would do is, before it died, once I've called help and they know, what's going on, if I'm doing whatever they've asked me to do, if they're like, hey, call every hour, whatever they say to do, I'll do. But I'm probably going to be saying my goodbyes as well. Just, my loved ones. But I don't know. I don't know if your phones will work, in an earthquake situation. A lot of the circuit breakers, everything goes down. So I'm not sure, but what I would say is I would leave it on because it is a way to trace you. So keep that going. Next thing is don't use any elevators. So the thing that people misconstrue is sometimes a building is rocking or starting to collapse. And people are like, oh, you're just buried right away. That's not necessarily the case. Like I said before, you might have time. So don't go running to, elevators, okay? If you're trying to think you have time and you have time, you can go down the stairs, but they actually say the roof is the safest spot. If you think that building is on the verge of collapsing, you want to go up, not down. The most dangerous part of the building is the bottom floors, okay? So if you don't have time, go up to the roof. That's what you do. Even if the building collapses, it's still the safest space, okay? Don't scream. So you're taking energy when you're screaming. You're taking in particles and air particles. If it's dusty or if there's some sort of fire, you're just expending energy, okay? Unless you hear people very close, then yes, you can bang a pipe, bang something, yell and scream and let them know that you're there. But if you're not hearing anything, don't just spend hours and upon hours just screaming and screaming, okay? That's what you're going to want your whistle for, your strobe light, your flashlight, something to bang on stuff. That is going to be a better source of your energy, okay? The next thing, a couple tips is where to go. Outer walls is where you go. So, a lot of things, people are like, find a doorway. No, you don't want to find a doorway because that's the inner side. Because a building, just because it starts to collapse, it still has after effects where it could still be collapsing. And so you might have made the initial collapse, but then now you go to the middle of your apartment in a door frame, and that is more dangerous than you going out to the outer walls, okay? So outer walls, and then under a big piece of chunky furniture. Whatever it is that you have that's kind of chunky, that's what you're gonna hide under and get under. All right. Okay, and then my last tip was higher floors is better, which we already talked about. You go up then down. Obviously, you already know, if you're living in a high rise, you should know your emergency plans as far as escaping, right? So you should know egress, how to get out of that building in the dark. Which direction do you go in the dark out when you leave your building, when you leave your apartment? Which direction are you going to go to the stairs? Is there more than one stairs? How would you go up if there was something blocked? Basically, you should just already have a basic emergency plan, just because it's dangerous to live in those buildings just because of fire and everyday stuff that could happen like that. And again, I might get some grief, you guys, for this video, but I really don't care. Your girl, we plan to survive anything and everything. And, if it's our time, it's our time. But I will and do prepare for everything. And so exactly what I just told you is kind of what I shared with this young lady, and she was thankful. So, could it help one day? Maybe. And maybe it doesn't. Okay. So you better be one with God. But there's some things you can do that could definitely help your situation. Okay. So I would love to hear in the comments below. I know you guys might have some cheeky things to say, and that's okay. And then I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care. Bye.